Hello, everyone, and a very good afternoon from Singapore. Today, I have a very special guest, Maya Madhusoodan, who is joining us from Singapore as well. Maya is the managing director of Space Doctors APAC. So I'll ask her to introduce herself and Space Doctors and the work that they do in a bit more in a couple of minutes. But just a couple of things before I hand over we get started with the session. So firstly, thank you to almost 130 people. I think the last I was counting, it was like 20 plus countries. So thanks a lot for taking the time to join us. And for those who can't join us live, the recording will be available after the session. So it will be there on LinkedIn as well as YouTube. I suggest you go and check it out on the YouTube channel. So and it would be lovely to know where all your where are you logging in from. So if you can just drop a comment from which part of the world you're logging in right now to watch this live stream, that would be great. So just a few things. My name is Rahul. I am the founder and I'm the chief consultant of Decode Strategy Labs. At Decode Strategy Labs, it's my baby, which I started a little over 6 months ago. I have been a planner all my life prior to this. And there are three things which I primarily offer as a part of this company. The first thing is the strategy advisory service, where I consult a lot of small as well as big companies. And it's a marketing consultancy. I also offer consumer research kind of work. The second part of it is consulting brands, startups, and agencies if they want to win fame and if they want to get recognized and win awards. So that's the other side. And the third part of it is a marketing academy that I run online, and I provide a strategic marketing course. And I'm also working on a couple of other courses. So whenever you have a moment, do check out the strategic marketing course on my website. It's a thorough course which I have developed with a lot of effort, a lot of blood, sweat, and tears, and I've put in my 15 years of experience all into this one course. And it's an easy way for you to earn that seat on the marketing decision table. So do check it out probably after the event. Couple of really big events are also coming up, which I think you should take note of and probably sign up for these events. These are all free events, so all you need to do is register, or if you are a subscriber on the YouTube channel, you can watch them. So next week we have Amit from AB InBev, and he'll be talking about distribution lessons that he's learned the hard way over a decade. After that, we have Mario, and he'll be talking about using controlled disruption to solve innovation challenges. And then we have Sandeep, who will be talking about the art and science of successful new product launches. And then 2 weeks later, we have Michael Sheen, and he's the author of the Hype Handbook, and he'll be sharing, talking about the success secrets from the world's greatest influencers. So that's pretty much the lineup for the next couple of weeks. Some of the other speakers, I'm still closing and finalizing the dates and the topics with them. So the thing that I wanted to mention is that there is a ton of hard work that goes behind the scenes, from finding the right people, trying to somehow build a connection with them in cases where I don't know them personally, trying to find common connections and all of that. So I think and that's purely on my part, all the discussions that I need to have, and then jamming with them on the topics. And then sometimes it's like a couple of sessions we do in the background before we actually go live on this live stream. So there's a ton of hard work on my part, on the part of the speakers as well. So I think it would be great if you can help out in a small way. And what you could do is you could follow the Decode Strategy Labs page on LinkedIn so that you're updated about future events. And whenever you find something that's relevant to you, you can join that event. You can alternatively, and I strongly suggest you do this, that is, you subscribe to our YouTube channel. And there's a ton of other content which I have created, which could be relevant to you or someone else in the marketing industry. Thirdly, please do share about it. It's harder and harder for me to keep promoting, and there's only so much organic reach we get these days. So if you liked today's session, for example, just take the link from the YouTube channel and just share it on your social media. In case you have any recommendations for any future speakers or any topics that you would like me to cover, drop me an email. My email ID is there in the event description, but if you want, it's hello@decodestrategy.com. So just drop me an email, reach out to me in any way you want, connect with me on LinkedIn, connect with us on the Decode page, however you like. So with that not so short introduction, I think it's time to get to the highlight of today's live stream. And I want to introduce Maya. And Maya, thank you so much for joining us. Really, really good to finally meet you after that, that wonderful introduction that Ramesh made about you. So it's so good to finally see you, and it's so good to finally have you join us in the live stream. So all yours, Maya.
Well, thank you, Rahul, for having me here. And thank you, Ramesh, if you're listening, for having thought I was worthy of being on Rahul's show, if I might call it that. I think you're doing a fantastic thing, bringing all this content from our industry out on your platform, or providing a platform for people to talk about things that they're passionate about. So, yeah, kudos to you for that.
Thank you.
And thank you all of you who've tuned in. This is the first time I'm doing something like this, so it might be a bit awkward, given I can't see who all are there. And I guess there are people from all sorts of countries, from Japan and all of that. Hi, Saroj. Yes, it's a Saturday. I want to make it worth your time. Just a quick introduction about myself. I'm the managing director of Space Doctors in Asia Pacific, and I've been working for about the last 2 decades in a mix of advertising, consumer research, and strategy. In a mix of agencies. I was in McCann and TNS, and then in a couple of boutique agencies, Holland Partners and Flamingo in Southeast Asia. For the last 4.5 years, I've been with Space Doctors and helping set up the Asia business. Now, I've always been drawn towards human psychology. I did psychology in my university, apart from a couple of other subjects. And that's kind of grown professionally as well into a career where I've been very grateful, to have traveled to various strangers' homes and had a peep into their cupboards and their wallets and their bags to see, what's going on in their lives. So for about a decade and a half, I did study what consumers were thinking, feeling, and doing, and I really enjoyed that journey. But towards the end of that, I started seeing the influence of culture in people's lives. And I think Adri was on 2 episodes ago, and Adri and I were colleagues, and he spoke about culture as well. So I think that's where we started to see the power and influence of culture. And since then, I've joined Space Doctors, where we only study culture and its influence on consumers. And we recoded back to brands to help them plan to stay agile for the futures, or to kind of localize to meet cultural relevance in local markets, especially in Southeast Asia. It can be quite tricky. So just making sure that meaning translates culturally well, a brand stays relevant with time. And that's been extremely exciting for me. It's been a great growth for me mentally, strategically, as well as a massive inspiration for me personally. And as Space Doctors, we are we call ourselves a cultural and creative consultancy. We're a bunch of semioticians, insight specialists, strategists, and creative expressionists. So we provide brands and organizations a strategy and executional devices to stay relevant, distinct, and compelling in a rapidly changing world. And I think COVID has made us all quite aware of how rapidly our world is changing. Sorry, that's my girl here. That's you see the merits of doing a live stream on a Saturday is you have 5-year-olds coming in at any point in time. You've got to leave, sweetie. I'm doing an event right now. Ask Baba for it.
If she wants to
Rahul, if you
appear
can
on
edit
the...
that. No, she wants scissors. She doesn't want to get on the live stream. She wants scissors. And I hope you can edit that out for the final YouTube, Rahul.
Don't worry, it's fine. We all understand that we are human at the end of the day, and this happens.
There are some non-humans that will come to lick my face as well very soon. I also have a dog, so let me give you the update in case it happens. Right, so just going back to what we do, I think COVID has really shown us how rapidly things can change at a very cultural level. And just even before COVID, we were starting to see seismic shifts in the ideas of topics like race, national pride, gender empowerment, equality, health, care, hygiene, even topics like resilience, efficiency, professionalism, working from home. The list is really long, and I could keep going on. And I think you would also have quite a few that you've been grappling with professionally. And brands really need to adapt to this change and connect to culture to stay relevant. Without it, they can't really stay relevant or distinct. They can lose their cultural cachet and fade out. And so we believe that culture is the hidden influencer. So now that's a photo of, a campaign that Wakol in Thailand ran a few years ago to just capture this sentiment that students were actually protesting against years and years of archaic rule. It came at a time when schools were really punishing the students for not wearing their uniforms or even kind of deviating a little bit, So they, Wakol just responded quite well to this cultural sentiment that was happening for the first time ever in Thailand. Also in parallel, they were actually protesting against the monarchy. And Wakol launched a ready-to-go uniform that actually comply with the school's dress code, but can easily, adjust not only to look trendy, but also to be versatile with their lifestyles out of school. And they made it really inclusive for all shapes and sizes. And, it really kind of rode the cultural wave. So, and that kind of also eggs consumers, empowers consumers in a way. It legitimizes what they are feeling and gives them a vehicle of expression. So we do believe that culture can influence the way people think, feel, and do things. And if brands can leverage this power in culture and actually execute and land this meaning really well, then it can be quite a powerful tool. So here's another picture, and if you're wondering what this signifies, there's half a yellow band there, which basically says, what does this signify? And if it was a participatory session, I would ask this question to the audience, but feel free to post what you think it signifies in chat. But in the interest of time, it's basically, this is a pro surfer in China called Darcy Liu. And because she is a pro surfer, she gets to spend a lot of time in the seas. And as you all know, our seas have been contaminated with plastic waste and things that we have been just sending out quite mindlessly out away from our homes without knowing where it's been going, right? So Darcy Liu is posing in this pretty poignant photo, which is symbolic of the fact that we might not have a beach to relax in. We would have to relax in a beach of trash. And she's a Chinese influencer who is based in China. And you can imagine how an image like this would have had no significance a decade ago, especially in China. And now people are starting to understand this a lot more and starting to make the connection to this situation and their lives and their everyday behavior. So that's ways in which meaning evolves with culture. And the other thing I want to touch upon is the idea of trash, of waste has changed. In the last 10 years, we have all really grown to look at trash with a new perspective. We never thought about trash. We would just mindlessly throw it away. Some of us maybe had a guilty conscience about throwing it away. Some of us didn't know what else to do with it. And some of us did feel and try to kind of change things about it. But majority of us had no idea of the connection between the trash that we were sending into our dustbins, because we assume it's going into a system, versus what's getting piled up in the oceans. So, but over the last few years, with a lot of recycling drives and a lot of messaging from the top, we're starting to see trash through a new light. We're starting to see the damage it can do, but we're also starting to see the wealth and the value that it can bring to us if it's actually put back into the system. So that's basically what we do in many ways at Space Doctors. We help brands identify this changing, shifting meaning. We provide fresh perspectives by actually giving the cultural point of view. And no matter what topic we study, like I mentioned earlier, sustainability has just cut straight to the heart of every study, be it a Gen Z study in any part of the world, or a project for an FMCG company to understand, skin or hair care, or be it a project for a technology company where we're studying, AR, VR, or the whole NFT technology. Sustainability is either the core narrative, or the backdrop to the narrative, or the solution to the issue, to the tension that the category is facing. And that's exactly why I chose this topic today, because we do know that all the CEOs to the world's biggest companies, the policymakers, the philanthropists, the academics, and a lot of influential individuals have reaffirmed their commitment to building a circular economy. And thank goodness for that, because consumers can't do it on their own. This has to come from people with power and agency to change the way we live. And at Space Doctors, we work with a lot of these companies, and we consult them on how to make meaningful changes to their business. And it's a good place to start, because packaging market will grow by 280 billion in the next 4 years. These are staggering statistics, and I don't mean this to be a kind of doom and gloom show, but it's just a reminder of how important packaging is, and how important understanding what we do with our products, and how we kind of design for the future to make sure that consumers don't have to bear the load of, managing their waste. And that's why when Rahul spoke to me a few weeks ago, I think it was 4 or 5 weeks ago, I said, Rahul, can we do future of packaging? Because a lot of people think about packaging as a completely separate function, as a very technological issue, but it can carry a lot of meaning. It's not just an outer sheet anymore. It's that protects the inside, what's inside of it. It's actually quite a symbolic piece of change that has to protect what's inside, but also has to do its bit for the environment that's outside. So hence, I'm just going to dig a lot deeper into how the role of packaging has evolved, and hopefully give you some interesting provocations or perspectives, and some useful principles with which we should be thinking about not just packaging, but stepping back and looking at how we operate as a brand or a business as a whole. And just to kind of kickstart my own research into this topic, because I've created all this content for the talk today, I ran a very simple query on our AI platform called Quid to understand what are the kind of companies and businesses that are in the packaging industry now, and what's going on there. And interestingly, I got these clusters which perhaps might be obvious or intuitive, but tell quite a critical story about how in the last 4 years, the companies and the businesses that have either gotten a lot of funding or have been working with those big CPG companies that are flashed up a few seconds ago are all in the packaging services platforms to eliminate waste, or they're kind of working around life science and processing principles that can fit into the circular system, or they're working around packaging material or solutions such as mushrooms and seaweed, or there's 22% of based on this chart, which in no means I'm going to say is definite, but it's indicative of the fact that people are working on design and collaborative systems. Now, it's interesting. It gives us, this data gives us a picture which we all would kind of, I don't think there's much to dispute. We know this is the kind of technological innovation we all need. And for those of you who work with the big companies, you'll know that your companies are working with companies, that provide these packaging solutions. But another way of looking at it, in a way that it affects our lives as consumers, is in the past, we had packaging that was just made of plastics, and the focus on the communication on the pack was really brand cues, the logo, and what are my distinctive assets, what are the product benefits, how should I talk about moisturizing, what are the claims, and the SKU legal details and things like that. And the consumer engagement was just a one-time use and then throw. But then now I think the dominant space is really about, post-consumer recycled plastic or material. Really, the communication has moved on from just brand cues and proclamation of, from just brand cues and product benefits to actually a front and center proclamation of recycled materials. And then, of course, there have to be a whole lot of, outside of SKU details, quite a few new mnemonics and claims around recyclable, biodegradable, and all of that. And the consumer engagement here could still be use and throw, but one hopes that we're adopting recycled practices. And we're starting to see a lot of brands already getting into changing consumer behavior and encouraging consumers to do things like refill and reuse. And here the consumer engagement is stretching to a much longer time with that packaging. So it's an interesting evolution of the role of packaging if you look at it from perhaps even 5-6 years ago to the kind of pace and the acceleration of change that we've seen in the last 5-10 years to new materials and new practices. So how might we understand the different meanings then of packaging for design? And typically at Space Doctors, we organize all of the insights into a map. Now, you're probably used to seeing maps and frameworks from a lot of other thinking and schools of research. But our map is really a map of meaning. What are the meaning oppositions in operating within the construct of your business, within what really forms the construct of your business? And how can we provide a kind of cultural snapshot at a moment in time, yet show how meaning is yet track how meaning is changing, how culture is evolving, and how we can kind of map the movement of brands within this and demand within this. And we use the meaning map to do that quite simply, quite usefully, strategically, but quite powerfully. So today, I've just decided to put all of the thoughts I've been having over the last week while I was putting this content together, which are really accumulation of all of the work that we've been doing in the recent times. So just getting into the axes that form the map. On the vertical axis, on the one hand, you have the linear aspect of sustainability, which is a journey of create, consume, and just throw waste, where the focus is really on consumption and perhaps increasingly on minimizing the impact of consumption. So yes, we're all becoming increasingly aware of recycling and doing our best to recycle. But at the other end of that axis is circularity, which is really about creating a system where there is no waste, where we keep creating materials out of the old one, or we design for inbuilt reusability within the packaging. And on the horizontal axis, you have material on the one hand. So just looking at, increasingly, we're looking at new materials that are less extractive. So it's really about, identifying ways in which we can technologically treat materials so they don't become waste. looking at ways in which we can innovate materials that are less toxic, and perhaps materials that leave no trace at all, thinking about the pack and the product as one. And on the other side of that axis, the opposition there is really thinking about the experience of using the packaging, which is really going into a much deeper engagement with the consumers, a more considerate and collaborative experience, because this is about inviting consumers to play their part in a way that is convenient for consumers as well and profitable for the brands. So this is about brands working with consumers, but also a kind of network of companies that don't necessarily have to be in the same category to work together as a circular system that find kind of solutions within their own operational cycles, but they're kind of working towards the same cause of eliminating waste and being regenerative. So that gives us the map of the future of packaging, which is really about recycling, which is pretty much the current dominant space. We are in the world of recycling. We're also kind of getting into the world of reduce quite rapidly. The idea of reuse, and I'm going to talk about reuse quite differently here, especially in the space of packaging, because I think we're all a lot more familiar with reuse in other aspects of product usage, but in packaging, it's taking on an interesting turn. And the idea of regeneration, which is just thinking about it from a materials point of view, but thinking about a circular version of materials, which follows the norms of biomimicry. So if we have to just look at each of these quadrants one by one, the recycle quadrant, you're all probably quite familiar with this, with the set of images that I've chosen here. A whole lot of brands, big CPG companies are all kind of coming up with post-recycled packaging. There's interesting messaging there from Coca-Cola, which says keep happiness going and recycle, and you see some ants carrying the bottle there, which is an interesting encouragement to people to recycle, or it could even be an allusion to the way in which insects live in a way that is completely circular, cradle to cradle, if you've heard that term within this space. But I really think that this space of recycling can generate quite a bit of barriers, because there are quite a few issues when it comes to recycling. Now, I've done a course on circular economy. I work a lot in this space, and I still have questions around when I buy something, when I'm using a product for my skin or my hair or for the kitchen, and I look at this oil and it says 100% recyclable, and I'm not so sure if it's already recyclable. Should I put it back into the recycling bin? And should I wash the oils off? It's got some kind of organic material in it. What should I do with the cream inside? What should I do with the toothpaste that's, the slight remains of the toothpaste in it? Can this still go into the recycling bin? Or wait a minute, should it go into compost? Oh, if it's biodegradable, can I compost it? Oh, what are all those like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 numbers at the back of that plastic packaging? There are lots of questions, and honestly, there's quite a bit of ambiguity around it. And in order to, of course, there are answers, but you have to put in a lot of time and effort to actually understand what is the right way of doing things. So the provocation we have for brands is, what's the one step you could take to make recycling more convenient for your consumer? And the other thing is, it's so easy in this world of convenience to actually, say that, right, I'm really hungry now. I really need to eat this food. I don't care where it comes from, but, I'm just going to order it anyway, or I'm just going to buy this package from 7-Eleven anyway. But how can you encourage positive behavior with your packaging? Because you also want to empathize with the pains that the consumer is going through. So there are ways, we're starting to see ways in which brands are introducing more positive messaging in a fun, lively way. It doesn't have to be, didactic. It doesn't have to be top down. It doesn't have to cause guilt. It needs to elicit participation. It needs to inspire people to do things, because then it becomes an experience for them. So some of the ways in which we've been studying is just looking at subtle kind of hints of messaging where, like you can see, congratulations, you just planted 10 trees. So it's about making the choice for a brand or a product where there is some level of sustainability already built into it. The company, the brand has taken quite a few measures to ensure that you are not creating waste as a consumer. There is that really cute IKEA GIF there, as well as the Coca-Cola GIFs, which are not moving right now for some reason. They're really about, reminding people about a little more care will really give us a little more beauty. And it's in Chinese, it sounds much better and more poetic. And that's a nice positive message to remind people and to reinforce that positive behavior does lead to more beauty. The C of change is also, see the change in the herbal essences packaging is also quite interesting, because it does show people how a few little kind of behavior changes can make quite a transformation. And there's an interesting packaging at the bottom there from Natura Sue, line of body, bath, and hair products. It's a Brazilian brand, and they've chosen pretty intelligent design, which already has a low environmental impact. But as you can see, there's quite a textural feel to it. It already looks crushed in the way that it comes, and it does encourage you to take it and squish it and do the next thing, is to not throw it away, but put it into recycling, right? So it's interesting, because if you can see a message of, if you can just see the integrity of your pledge in your material textures and messages, I think consumers now are getting used to the fact that you're doing the most sustainable thing by choosing post-consumer recycled plastics. But you could push that messaging further to actually perhaps talk about the rebirth of that material, which can really inspire people to say, right, so all the recycling I'm doing is going into this material, so I should be recycling more. Tell me, how can I recycle more? So that's the kind of response that we should be getting more and more from consumers these days, everywhere in the world. So that's what I have to say in how we can encourage more people to recycle, and how we can encourage more people to recycle more. So this is really about pushing recycling, and this is something we really need to do a lot more of right away, because, as you know, there's quite a bit of urgency in this cause. The next one is about reducing. Now, all of us do try in some way or the other to reduce the waste, the packaging that we can. And now there are kind of policies, and department stores are putting in barriers to actually use a lot of plastic packaging. But if you look at the one extreme, where you've got all these zero waste zealots, as they're called in the digital space, they kind of live on one jar of waste for 3 months. They have to change their entire lifestyle, change the products they use, make all of it from scratch at home. And, perhaps they don't have kids as well. So it's not really the most practical thing for all of us to do, right? There's also, for those of us who want to do this in moderation, yes, we can take our bags and our jars and go to the supermarket, which there are quite a few in most of the cities now that are no packaging stores. But again, we have to learn a lot about how it works. We got to weigh our containers on the scale, then we got to fill it, then we need to plan for this whole trip. We need to. It's also going to be quite hard to take public transport carrying all of these bags with us. I tried, and I pretty much dropped a lot of things from my bag once, and I realized it's quite inconvenient, and you really have to think it through. So yes, it helps you lead a slower, more considered life, which is great. But let's face it, it is inconvenient. So and also these shops are a lot more expensive, which becomes a barrier, because then it's sustainability is something just for the affluent. So how can you liberate consumers from the pressures of actually managing their waste. And we are starting to see a whole lot of a sea change again in this space, because just in the last couple of years, a lot of the big brands have launched refill stations in Indonesia, the Philippines. Lovely to see those Unilever refill stations, and fantastic branding there, which reminds you of the good you're doing for the environment. We do know about, quite a few companies in the US that are really trialing out the refills for food as well. You can see that little pasta packaging there, which also takes into care the design and the delivery of the pasta into the hot boiling pan of water, which is a great kind of way to think about user experience with packaging and the product in it, because at the end of the day, you have to design for longevity when it comes to refills. That's Hermès's lipstick case there, which is refillable. And they're really made for beautiful stackable lipstick cases that can make your shelf at home look pretty. So it's a different kind of shelf presence that we're talking about now, moving from the retail space to your home space. Dove has just most recently launched refillable deos. Olay's got refillable cream jars now, and you can see a whole bunch of other examples. These were the nice looking ones that I found for the sake of this presentation today, but you get the gist. But in order to actually continue with the whole refill business, it does take a huge seismic shift in behavior from consumers. But what we need to do is think about packaging principles with longevity in mind. So how are consumers going to use that product? In what context? What behavior is important in their culture? Are they going to keep it in their bag? Is it a portable thing? Is it going to be at home? Is it going to be in their kitchen? Is it going to be in their bedroom? Is it going to be in their bathroom? And how are they using it? It's going to require a deeper study into usability, but also about how people in the culture have been traditionally using a certain kind of, doing a certain kind of practice would also help. And we can definitely explore the ability to play around with new materials, because if it's refillable, you're moving to heavier material, more durable material, perhaps, more metals. And there's so much joy and excitement and potential out there to play with functionality, clicks, gestures, haptics, just inviting people to use the bottle in a certain way and to provide that kind of a different set of stackable shapes, perhaps, or textures or delivery systems. There's a lot of room to actually have fun and engage with consumers for a longer period of time, because interestingly, this does create automatic barriers to buy from another brand. You can create a deeper and longer engagement and build loyalty with refillable packaging. So this is why, again, I think packaging is going to be crucial for brands to think about a lot more in terms of landing their experience. So in the third quadrant at the bottom right, you've got reuse, and we're really already talking about what's happening in the future here, because there are very few brands doing it in the space of packaging. In Indonesia, Aqua has collaborated with H&M as well as Grab Express, two different businesses, to ensure there's very convenient collection of all the bottles. And with Grab Express, they actually have delivery boys who are going to, and for those of you who don't know what Grab is, it's the local Uber. So we've got Gojek and Grab, and there's quite a few collaborations with them to actually pick up plastic bottles from consumers. And there's interesting, user manuals on how to do that in the app. And it goes through a fairly, they use ship and the ocean to transport it to recycling plants, which belong to Danone and Aqua, and then they send it out for new materials. So H&M as well has collection places, Pan Indonesia, and the plastic from the bottles get recycled into fabric. And they've quite strategically made it specifically for the clothes line for children, because they can encourage and create awareness and understanding of sustainability among children. But also children are pretty symbolic of the future, and they are catalysts of change. In the Western world, you've seen examples of Loop. You're probably quite familiar with that because it came quite a few years ago. And most recently, Starbucks has been partnering with a company called Ridwell, which makes it quite easy for you to just drop off your Starbucks mugs, and Ridwell will collect it and take it into a kind of recycling function. So this again, there's a lot of untapped potential here to actually create an experience around pack exchange. It can be quite involving for the brand, and it could really open up a very different touch point for the consumers, where you can think about what this experience means. So again, the principles in this particular reuse space is really to find ways to create greater engagement at the post-consumption stage. And packaging design should allow for accumulation. Think about easy stacking or interesting ways to, collect kind of series that fit into a sequence or shape jigsaw, for instance. And H&M provides an incentive if you drop off bottles and things like that. So that needs to provide an incentive for people to start normalizing this behavior. And of course, got to create a digital interface. So there's a lot of opportunity here to use your packaging to actually create a way in which you can straight away take the consumer to your digital space to look at experiences or rotation cycles, or put them on a subscription pickup scheme perhaps, and mirror all this information on the pack. So it's quite an untapped space in terms of what this means for packaging, but it can be quite an interesting space for brands to get into. And the last one, I'm quite conscious of time, don't want to keep talking, is the space of regeneration. And I think this is a lot of fun. This space we're starting to see a lot of interesting things in this space. As you can see, there are quite a bit of examples of things that look somewhat familiar, but also look quite unfamiliar. So I'm not sure if you're all aware of the new materials that companies are starting to use from mushrooms and seaweed and edible plant processes. Notpla, which are the top two images there, are creating interesting new materials that are quite traceless. So you can just consume, it's edible, it's completely edible. So you can burst those little sachets of sauces into your salad and just eat the whole thing. So it gives you that interesting squishy experience of bursting a sauce, but also, there's no waste to deal with. There's no sticky fingers in terms of sauce and the ketchup and things like that. So there's quite a bit of food waste, food packaging waste that can be saved. There's also the Uho, which are little water bags. They're biodegradable organic membranes made out of algae and calcium chloride. They're quite interesting blob-shaped vessels to carry water, and they introduced it at a marathon recently. It was a huge hit because you know how marathons can be wonderful, but there's quite a bit of plastic bottle waste generated there. KFC got burgers in wrappers that you could eat. There are edible chopsticks. There's, cushioning packaging made out of mushroom. It's also meant to be biodegradable. And there's also interesting ways to kind of combine materiality into experience. That's a conceptual packaging for a toothpaste where, you don't have to, you can kind of squeeze it and stack it in a way that you're not wasting the last bits of toothpaste in the tube, and it could apply to any packaging that goes in a tube. So it's interesting to think about what does traceless mean for your category. It is a space where product design and packaging design converge. It is a space where you're actually conceptually taking up a lot less space. So not only are you driving the values of sustainability forward, but it's also, you show up as a far more innovative company. And it's interesting because you've got to start thinking about the pack needing to complement and amplify the product experience in a sensory way, just as much as elevating the taste or the way in which the product is used. So yeah, I mean that's the end of this presentation, and I should have had the map here again for you to look at. But essentially, if there's one thing I want you to take out of today, it's that packaging isn't one-way communication anymore. It really is about being more participatory, and it gives you a platform to have a fantastic dialogue with your consumer, a whole new touch point. So really think about engaging the consumer with your packaging experience going forward is the one thing. And I do want to thank Silai and Coco, my colleagues, who really helped me build all this content in the last week. And with that, I'll stop talking.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Maya. That's absolutely wonderful. I got really excited by the last quadrant that you spoke about, the regenerate quadrant, because it almost felt like it's a 360 sustainability led organization development, where it kind of goes beyond thinking about just packaging, but you're also thinking about it, or maybe the conversation starts from the product itself, and then it moves into packaging, and then it moves into communication, and maybe it kind of becomes a part of the overall organization culture, and manifests in different ways, in the way they the kind of spaces they rent out for business, the kind of people they hire, the kind of practices they follow, and it's almost like a 360 kind of a space, which is extremely interesting.
Yeah.
So awesome, great. Thank you so much for this session.
My pleasure.
And thanks to your colleagues for contributing and making this wonderful, and some lovely provocations over there for brands to take away. So thanks to everyone. So for those who are live, and if you have any questions at this point in time, this would be a good time to post your questions in the comment section, whether you're watching it on YouTube or you're watching it on LinkedIn. So I just have a couple of things which I wanted to probably start with, and my first question is that where do you see this out of the 4 different quadrants which were there? Are you able to hear me properly?
Yeah.
So out of the 4 different quadrants which are there, where do you see currently the focus to be? Like, where is the because there are so many different factors that need to be considered. There are so many practical situations that have to be kept in mind. So where do you think the focus lies at the moment, and where do you see it moving towards going ahead?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. Like you said, these are all technological innovations, and they have their own timelines. So I feel like, I've just flashed the map again, and I don't know if you noticed, it was just while I was going through, I was talking about what's happening now, what do we see a lot about now, and what we're going to see a lot about in the future. So we're seeing a lot of the top half of this map right now. So we're seeing currently, most of the products that the companies that have taken the pledge in, to reduce their carbon footprint by 2030, and things like the Unilevers, the P&Gs, the Danones, the Nestle's, Coca-Cola's, Pepsi's, their products are all made of at least 30 to 100% post-consumer recycled material, right? Which is fantastic, and they come with that seal now. Some of them do make it more front and center, because now you do have to talk about sustainability as a value that the brand embodies, on top of all the other values that you already stand for. It is important because, for various reasons, companies are making the billions of investments into this space. So it's important to bring consumers onto their journey as well. And I think just pushing that a little further with more positive messaging about what to do with that packaging, because there's still a lot of ambiguity in that space. There's high levels of awareness, but there's low levels of understanding. While I was doing this, I was quite surprised that even in the US, only 9% of Americans recycle their products, and I really didn't get a chance to study what that looks like for the rest of the world, but especially recent figures. But I'm not surprised. It is alarming, but it is not surprising. So I think just pushing people into that positive behavior and helping people get a better understanding is something we can do as brands or agencies working with brands. And that's a quick one. It's a quick win for brands, because we can act upon that instantly through messaging, or even just printing packaging sleeves. And the next one is the refill situation, Rahul, because that's something that requires a bit of a system overhaul. It requires an overhaul in the way retail systems are structured. Like you said, we have to train personnel differently to deal with, this queue of people who are coming to refill. But it's not a new behavior because people have been refilling their drinks, from the 7-Up Pepsi machines for a while now. So it's something that we can learn from other categories that have been in the vending business for a while and see how to kind of incorporate that experience and deal with the ambiguity. But it also generates a fair amount of excitement because there's participation, right, from the consumer's point of view. That said, we also have to think about, how this whole refill system works in a home delivery situation. So you're right, there's no one easy solution to it. It's a lot of systemic thinking that needs to go into the whole process. But I think, if we have to look at a kind of pathway where we're going from recycling, where there's a greater, deeper level of awareness and understanding, into this space of reducing in the packaging world through refills, and then making it easy, because the circular system is collaborations at a business and a logistical end that businesses are already undertaking. Now, this is about getting consumers into that loop, getting consumers involved and participating in kind of collecting the packaging waste. And that's an interesting one because, like I said, it makes way for another touch point with consumers. That might take a little longer, but going by the example in Indonesia, it was, it was fantastically deployed by Danone and their partner companies. So there has to be a fit of values with the leadership who want to make it happen. And operationally, these logistics exist. They just need to start talking to each other, I think. The regenerate space with the new materials, there's a lot of work happening in that space. Like I said, that first, cluster of companies that have been garnering interest in the last 4 to 5 years, about 20 to 24%, I think, of them work in new materials specifically. And a lot of the, big packaging companies are all working in this space. So it's only a matter of time when technology comes from, startups which are receiving a lot of funding and investment. We'll start seeing that happen because that's the most convenient option.
Yeah, true. It almost makes me think that it's probably so much more easier for a brand that's starting off fresh to decide where they want to be, as opposed to the older established brands, and especially the bigger ones where it's so much more difficult and all. Which kind of leads to the second question, that for brands to take a decision on what they want the packaging to, the future of their brand's packaging to be. An important consideration factor would be that how much of this would require an involvement from consumers, and how much of it would mean that there is a little bit of a behavior change. There is a role that is expected for the consumer to play in the entire process. What are your thoughts on that? Should the intent be to try and make it extremely simple so that there is not much of an effort required on the consumer side, or should the effort be to try and keep them involved, give them the opportunity or the chance to play their part along with you in the process, along with you in the journey to towards sustainability, and almost partner with you in the process?
Well, there's no like this or that situation. I think everybody needs to come on board. Like you said, the newer disruptive brands are starting from scratch, and the disruption is based on solving tensions such that, and a lot of the tensions are very sustainability based. If you look at skincare, for instance, the disruptive companies are all coming up with plant-based ingredients, vegan, or very sustainable material-based stuff. So the starting point for new companies is sustainability, is engaging consumers who want to make this choice, giving them that option. So there are a lot of consumers who want to make better choices, and therefore will choose brands that where they see that fit in their value system. And it's only a matter of time when this becomes this is something that if it is currently only an important need. 2 years ago, we used to get briefs saying in the US, sustainability is at the heart of this brand, but it's not going to sell in China because people don't think, that Chinese people do want sustainability, but they're not going to choose this brand because it is sustainable. They will still choose this brand because it's great on functionality. And that has already changed. Now people are already wanting brands to show what they're doing in the space of sustainability. So brands have to do what I think it's the onus and the responsibility is on brands. Also because brands are a corporation and can influence change at a much bigger scale. And if we're talking about brands like Unilever's and P&G's and, they've got this network of distribution. The impact that they can create with decisions at their end is huge. Now, whether they need to bring consumers on their journey or not really depends on the category, because it will have to, like the foods category will have to, be quite regenerated very quickly, because food packaging waste is a huge part of it. And you can't really, there are intricate complications just because it's food and the packaging is soiled. So it's hard to recycle that material. So you have to solve for that problem. But there are things like plastics, like bottles, which can get into another system and become new material and can have rebirth in terms of material. So it will really depend on the category, the functionality they serve, and the nature of materials that they need to still kind of hold their product intrinsics together.
Yeah, makes sense. I'll just pop a comment from Karthik over here, and if you want to add to it. Karthik talks about how he's seeing brands still using packaging just for appearance and not really to resolve any true purpose. It's almost sounding like, sustainability as a lip service as opposed to it being a true intent on the part of the brand. Any personal experiences or any point of view you have on this comment?
Yeah, I agree. And I think it's only a matter of time before these companies just lose out, because sustainability is not really about, doing the good thing for charity. It's really thinking about longer term profits, because if we're going to keep extracting materials from the earth, then, we're going to lose out in the long term. So if companies and brands don't see this, then they lose out one way or the other.
Yeah. And I think there seems to be a culture of brands being called out more and more for either being fake about their sustainability claims, or being not very authentic about their sustainability conversation.
Exactly. And sorry, I just wanted to say, packaging is the one place where you can really walk the talk. And I've been trying to avoid this pun the entire time, but it's where you wear your values on your sleeve.
Yes, exactly. So I think it's time to wrap up. We are on the 58th minute. So we are doing perfectly fine as far as the time is concerned. So just before I wrap up, I just want to remind everyone that if you want to stay updated with future events, you should follow the Decode Labs page on LinkedIn, and you can watch the recording of this video as well as future live streams, live or recorded, on the YouTube channel. So go and subscribe to that channel as well, and do share. This is such a wonderful session that we have. So if you liked it, enjoyed it, just take the link from YouTube and share, and let other people get a chance to see this as well. So that brings me to the end of today's session. I think your daughter is saying hello from the background. So
yes. Where is she? Yeah, I just want to zone her out. She just doesn't know what to do today.
So I wanted to thank each and every one who watched it live, and those who couldn't make it, to the live event and will watch it in the future. And very special thanks to you, Maya.
Not at all.
This was a really thorough deep dive, and I think there are some uh, very exciting provocations that you have pointed out, as well as some of those principles which the brands can keep in mind while they are trying to make a decision as to which quadrant is probably the most, the feasible, viable, desirable kind of a perspective, if you were to look at it through that lens. So which quadrant probably makes the most amount of sense to them, and then acting upon it, and then if possible making it more of a 360 approach as opposed to it being lip service. So lovely having you. Thanks to Ramesh for having introduced you, and hopefully we have more of these sessions with you in future. So thanks a ton.
Thank you.
Okay.
Pleasure.
Thanks.